Hey, everybody. Welcome to Retro Repair Roundup. I'm one of your many hosts. I'm Ron. I'm joined this week by a special co host, Sloopy Malibu. Sloopy, how are you doing?
Doing all right. It's good to be here.
That's great. And I want to thank our special guests also, Peter and Bill, for being here to talk about Atari Party. Let's do just a tiny bit of housekeeping and then we'll launch right in. So I want to say thanks to One Bit Fever Dreams and Francois, Everything is Broken Garage, Retro Tech or Die, Jim's Retro Stuff, Josh Malone, Garth Beagle is here, Mr. Tech Gadget, Dave's Vintage Apple Tech, Jack68K, Curtis Boyle, Y2K Compliant, and hey, Pete, you're in the chat as well. And Amiga Bill is here. Amiga, good to see you. Bill, thanks for. I enjoyed your video. We're talking about the recap stuff, so I'll have to go back and rewatch the rest of it. So, but yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out in chat. Just to address kind of why we're a little light tonight. Joe and Trina are both under the weather, and Javier's having some technical problems, but he might be back just as soon as he can get that cleared up. So anyway, that's really it for all of that. So again, Peter, Bill, thanks so much for joining us this evening. What we're here to kind of talk about is an event that I'd kind of heard about, but maybe hadn't really paid a lot of attention to because it's not something that's specifically in my fandom wheelhouse. It's something I've always been interested in. I grew up with it just like everybody else did, but it's I never made the bridge over to the computers and some of the later things. But let's talk about Atari Party. So kind of how did things get started? I'll let you guys kind of lead the conversation, and I'm sure people in chat will have some questions. And Sloopy, as someone who's more learned with Atari stuff than I, will probably have some good things to ask as well.
Well, I can see right away that a lot of people in the chat were at Atari Party or have been in the past. So that's great to see.
Yeah.
So, Bill, I mean, do you want to start? You want to take that?
Yeah. So, Pete and I met doing exhibits at a Vintage Computer Festival East in Wall, New Jersey, probably 10 years or more ago. And if you guys have been to VCF East, you know it's many different computers, both 8-bit, 32-bit, older stuff, newer stuff. And we really wanted to start something that was just Atari related. And we kind of went with Bill Kendrick's idea. He used to have Atari Party out in California, where I think he rented out a library, and a bunch of people would come together with Atari, and they would just do Atari stuff all day. And so basically, we kind of decided to do the same thing. And as we were looking at it, I guess we didn't want to spend too much money renting a place. So when we started, maybe I think it was 2017, Pete, is that right?
Yeah, that was our first year.
Yep. We did it in my basement because at the time I had a 2,000 square foot basement and
Nice.
like a dozen arcade machines, and everybody brought their Atari equipment, and it was a lot of fun. So Pete, want to add some to that?
So yeah, I mean, we had all sorts of people come. Amiga Bill was there, one of the early people that came down, and we'd laugh and exchange Amiga and Atari ST humor. But as a whole, it really worked out really well. People were always very respectful. David All was there. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but David All was the creative computing guy. He actually came one year, which was just amazing. And he's a guy in his 80s, and he was wonderful. He just talked to everybody, and so we really enjoyed having it at Bill's house. And the one difference was from Bill Kendrick's idea. So Bill Kendrick was this guy in California, and that was in the Pacific Northwest, but he started this whole thing in 2009 or something. And his was at a library and was open to the public. There was no cost of any kind, but being at Bill's house, we couldn't do that. So we always kind of had in our mind, we wanted something that was kind of like semi-invite, semi-public. And after COVID happened, Bill ended up moving a house to a smaller place to be near his mom. And we were like, what are we going to do? And so we looked at a few places. And in my town, it's not an abandoned train station, but it's no longer in use. So the transit authority in Philadelphia said, you're just a little too far, and we're not going to run electric to this track anymore. And so it's been held. People have like wedding events and baby showers, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'll go talk to them and see if they'd even be interested. And I went there, and they kind of looked at me like I was crazy. These people are, again, I'm old, but they're older than I am, and they're like, "What are you trying to do?" And then I was just like, "It's kind of like a model train event, but with old computers." And they were like, "Oh, that's amazing!" Like they like that kind of got them on board. And then so last year was our first time that we did. And it was more of, again, just kind of invite only, because we didn't know what to expect. And this year we opened it up a little bit more to the general public. There was a few people there. I'm like, "Do you know who these people are?" And they just kind of came in and ate pizza and played games.
Yeah.
And the whole concept.
The train station only holds maybe 30, 40 people, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there wasn't tables in there, like 60 people maybe would be comfortable. But at a time, anything more than like 40 starts getting a little uncomfortable. So, but so like we had every type of Atari equipment there. And last year was kind of more just Atari, but this year, like, people are like, "Hey, can I bring Apple Lisa?" I'm like, "Sure, I don't care. It's fine." It's just about getting together. It's a free event for people. We hang out and we just play games. That's pretty much it.
That's awesome. And it's really great that you guys have kept this going for as long as you have. And I love hearing stories where it's sort of like, hey, there was this great thing that happened for so long, and we wanted to continue, we needed to continue, and people pick up that torch and just keep running, because there's so many great events, there's so many fun things in this hobby that have just kind of gone by the wayside, because you had people that were very much the kind of like the main architect, or like kind of like the face of something, and they pass on or just aren't able to do that thing anymore, and that stuff falls by the wayside, and the hobby kind of suffers for that. But it's really, really great that this continues. And not just that, but also is not so gatekeepery that it's like that Amiga Bill couldn't show up and maybe sneak a Amiga 500 into the corner of the room or something. Just not plug it in, but just kind of set it over there as a reminder of our 68K brethren, right?
Well, this year is interesting because we, Pete and I wanted to do something at VCFE's called Atari Soft, which was in the early 80s. Atari started distributing software for other computers, but they put their label on it, Atari Soft. We haven't done it yet. I think we were planning to do it, and then COVID struck, and we never got back to doing it at VCF. So we brought that out this year to Atari Party. So we had some, like a VIC-20, and I think maybe a Commodore 64, and Apple II, all running Atari Soft software. So we did have other computers there this year as well.
That's very cool.
I also find that there's two main types of Atari people. One where they're pure Atari everything from the 2600 to the Atari 8-bit, to the ST, Jaguar, Portfolio, Lynx, etc. And then others that they're Atari people, but they're more disciples of J Minor, where they're 2600 to the Atari 8-bit to the Amiga.
Right. So that's in our chat. That's Amiga Bill. That's he's yes. That guy. He is the J Minor fanboy. And again, we all love J Minor, but that's his thing. Like he started with Atari and then was like, "Hey, this J Minor guy is amazing. I'm going to follow him and go from there."
Yeah, but, I'm the same way.
And I get it. I now Bill ended up going to the PC after his 8-bit. I went to the ST. Purely, I was a young guy. I was 15 years old. My parents are getting divorced, and they're like, "You look sad. What do you want?" And I'm like, "I want a new computer." And the Atari ST had just come out, so that was how that worked out for me. So I was the guy who stayed in to the end. Like I saw the ship was taking on water. Salvos were hitting the side of the ship, and I just was like, you know what? I'm just going down with the ship. So I had my first computer was an Atari 400, and my last Atari computer was an Atari Falcon 030. Like I went the whole way. So I was that guy, and frankly, I didn't really understand what happened in 1984. I was 14 and I wasn't really paying attention that Warner Brothers was gone, and they were out of the, Warner Communications was out of the Atari business, and the guy who bought Commodore ultimately, Jack Tramiel was the new sheriff, and I didn't know any of that stuff. I was like, hey, it's an Atari computer. I have one of these at home. I want a new Atari computer. So that's what.
Yeah.
That's what so.
It is unfortunate that It's Just Business killed this amazing company and this amazing platform and all the awesome things you could do on it, because I mean, just some of the decisions. I've watched documentaries about it, and it's just frustrating to watch, where it's just like, well, we're just going to wring every last thing we can wring out of this. We're going to release a bunch of weird stuff that competes with other stuff we already make. And then eventually it just comes down to, well, let's just clean out the warehouses. It's just like, it's so frustrating. I remember the video game crash, but I mean, I was like, pretty young. I was like, I was old enough to be like, wow, we got a bunch of brand new games cheap. That's all I knew. And then with everything else that kind of followed after that with Atari and their poor history, poor guys.
Well, and they changed hands so many times after the Tramiels, and it's been a bit of a ride. And up until the current people that own Atari seem like they actually care a little bit for the first time in a long time. I don't know if that lasts or not, but they do seem to care a little bit at the moment, which is impressive. So,
and they've been hiring people that have been in the Atari fan community for a long time and bringing them on board. I think that's helping to make a difference as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely has done that. And like, you can buy, again, brand new, you can buy brand new in the box Atari 2600 joysticks again. They make wireless ones. And they're 9-pin, so they work with Commodores and they work with computers from that era. That's kind of a new thing, and it's kind of nice. They're built well. They seem pretty good. Some kind of a crazy sound.
Yeah, no one noticed. No one.
Donkey Kong? Is it Donkey Kong?
No. That's a sound that you make when you die in Pitfall. It's my. It's a ringtone for my phone.
Nice. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, because then the alert message for my phone is the triple beeps from Star Raiders. Yes, I'm an Atari person.
I see that.
If you need any more proof, I will have my dog Pokey come down here.
Oh, that's great. Well, this is kind of an embarrassing thing. My son has just turned 25. His name's Nolan. So
yeah.
My wife had no idea.
But
my kid's name is Nolan. So
that's great.
What's the name of your dog, Pokey? So
yeah. Hey, my son's name is Joshua.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And yes, it is from the movie.
Yeah, right.
She didn't have any clue either.
Yeah. Well, that was okay, because you led with, we should call him Whopper.
Yeah.
And then it was like, so Joshua sounded much more sane. Yeah. That's really great. But the event and stuff like that, it's just for people that maybe don't know, what type of year do you normally host it? And if someone was interested in maybe coming in and doing an exhibit, how do they go about through the process of like contacting you and saying, hey, I'd love to bring my my complete box collection of Atari 400 software in?
So I think we've been doing it in the fall. Like, we started out in September, and now it's in early December. I think when we first started, we wanted to be 6 months away from VCF, which is usually in April. That's kind of why we picked that date when we started.
Right. So it's in December now, the first week in December, and it's been there for the last 2 years, basically because the people that we kind of, hey, we have a core group of people who want to be here. It was the time we could all agree we were all available. So that's kind of how it stemmed out from. But we've also found that it's kind of like that weird low period between holidays, and it starts getting cold and dark, and people are more inclined to, like, you try to do this in August, and people are like vacations, or it's just
kids are going back to school.
Yeah.
Club stuff's starting back up, and sports.
So we have like a little website. It's awful. I put it together, and I haven't done coding in a long time and that sort of thing. So it's just atariparty.org, and in there's an email, and people said, hey, like, I just said, space is limited. Contact me, and I'll see if you can come. Like anybody can come and attend and walk around. Obviously, we only have so many tables, and
Right.
we just sort of, I don't know how to put it. It's kind of like figure out where you can sit, because there's only so many, there's only so much space. So you have to be like,
Right.
well, I bought 30 things. Well, I'm only going to show 2 things because I
Mhm.
want everybody else to have a chance to do that. So,
Yeah.
and thankfully for me, I live like 5 minutes from the train station, and I have a big van from work, and I just load it with stuff. And so
Mhm.
there'll always be things to be there. I would rather other people put stuff on the tables, but if not, I can supplement stuff because I'm just right around the corner. So
Yeah, absolutely.
It was
And
nice when it was in my basement because I didn't have to move anything. It was
Yeah.
all there.
That's pretty great. What about so it takes place in at the Quakertown train station in Quakertown, PA. So a previously disused don't let that maybe sounds scary. A retired train station.
Correct.
It's
That
a
is
beautiful
now
building. It's a bit beautiful, right downtown Quakertown. It's really nice.
Mhm. But
yeah, so
lots
SEPTA
of
was the-
events and things. Sorry.
So
Sorry.
SEPTA was the people that own the train station, which is the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority. But they stopped running trains there in 1982, I think.
Mhm.
And so there's still some freight that goes past there, but there's passenger service ended because they electrified the tracks from like 10 miles south of us all the way to Philadelphia, and they just like we're not running the electric company further. So that's kind of how it ended. So
fair enough.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. So, but definitely folks should go to the website and stuff and reach out if you are interested in maybe doing an exhibit, or if it's your first time attending, just to get maybe a little bit more information about that. Definitely reach out. Atari Party. There's a email address, but I'm sure it will change between now and next year's event. So, but yeah, hit the website and get more information about that. So, we'll cycle back to Atari Party stuff here in just a second. But I want to ask both Pete and Bill just kind of how you got started in computing in general, and then what kind of drew you to Atari, and if you had like a lot of us have time in the wilderness where we went and did other things, and then we just kind of come back to the things we love. Just whatever you want to tell us kind of about getting started as in your fandom of computing, and then kind of finding Atari as kind of a cool focus.
Well, for me, I started my first programmable thing was the Big Track. I don't know if you remember this toy from the late 70s. It's like a programmable robot. And so that's really where I first did some programming. Then at some point, my older brother bought the Atari 2600, and we got the basic cartridge, which you really couldn't do much with, but you could do something. And soon after that, I got my Atari 400. I think in early 1982, got the 400. Was programming on that. I think by the time I was a senior in high school, I moved to the Apple IIc because we were using the Apple II in school, and I had to be able to do Pascal programming. Couldn't really do that on my Atari, so went to the Apple IIc. Then I went into the military for a while. When I got out, I was a PC guy, but I always had the love for the Atari and the nostalgia for the Atari, and I guess I got back into it in the late 90s. But once the internet really started getting going and you could contact people. So that's when I got back into it and been doing it for the last 25 years.
For me, 1980 Christmas, I got an Atari 2600. My brother and I got a 2600, and came with combat packed in, and we got video pinball, and I'm trying to think what else. We got three games. I don't remember what the other one was at the moment, but it was great having an arcade in your house. Like it was just, I don't know. I would think Space Invaders, which was obviously a great 2600 port. But so then a year later, I had at our school, we had Commodore pets that went on this cart. Like I think the school had 2 pets, and they would bring it around to the classrooms, and you could spend a little bit of time. And it was in our math class they brought it to. And I was just enthralled. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can make this thing respond like, hey, Pete is awesome from the screen 33 times or whatever. Like, it was just like magical to me. So I wanted a computer. And I asked my parents for Christmas, like, hey, I didn't even care which one it was. Like, I just want a computer. And they didn't get me one. But I did get some Christmas cash, and I had a paper route that I had, and I had saved up some money. And in our town, Sears had this thing called Sears Surplus Store. So in Philadelphia, they had a big warehouse for all their catalog sales. So when you ordered out of Sears catalog on the East Coast, it all shipped out of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
After the Christmas season, any returns or things that didn't sell got moved to, they had 4 or 5 of these in the Philadelphia region. They called them Sears Surplus Stores, and they sent the stuff to the surplus store.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in between. I was still on Christmas break, and I went to the Sears Surplus Store, and they had Atari 400 stacked from floor to ceiling. And they were, I remember, it was $189, and which was a lot of money in 1981, but way cheaper than what these were if you had bought them before Christmas.
Mhm.
And so I took my Christmas money and my paper route money, and I bought this computer, and I brought it home, and I plugged it in, and I expected to be able to do something with it, but the Atari 400 and 800 did not include anything. So it's something pops on the screen, it says memo pad, and you can just like write on it, and that was it. There was no basic or anything. So
Right.
I was like, what the hell was this stuff? You know, it's got this chip with keyboard, which I didn't care about. But my parents felt bad for me, and they took me back to Sears, and they bought me the basic cartridge. So I just had basic and a computer for probably 6 months, where I just would type things in and tell people don't turn it off, because if I turn it off, I'm going to lose there.
Yeah.
And so from there, then I ended up getting a cassette player, and then the next year, the Atari. 2 years later, the Atari 800 XL came out, and I got that for my birthday. And then for Christmas, I got a 1050 disk drive. And my brother and I were so excited to get the disk drive that we actually bought a couple of games on disc before we actually knew we were getting a disk drive for Christmas. So we were very hopeful. So I got Ultima 3 on disc, and I was like, I better buy me this thing. I'm going to not be able to use it. But from there, like as I mentioned before, my parents got divorced a couple years later, and they kind of was like guilted them into buying me a computer to make me feel better. And that's when I got an Atari ST. They had just come out in 1985, and it was the summer of 85. I bought an ST, and then I stayed with STs all the way to the end. The last computer Atari made was in 1992. It was called the Atari Falcon 030, which it had like a built-in DSP, which was like great for music. It's the first computer that was ever able to do direct-to-disc audio recording. So it was big with music people. I'm not a music person. I just was an Atari fan, and when I bought it, I bought it at a music store, and as I was leaving, I was like, I'm an idiot for spending this money for this, but I wanted it. And so then after that, I ended up buying a Mac with my wife, because I didn't know what else to do after Atari stopped making computers. That was it. So,
Well, I don't have a big illustrious Atari story. All of my stuff is just based on, we had a 2600 growing up, like most people's houses, and just after the crash, had a ton of games and just loved it. And I held on to that like way longer than what, part of that was finances, and part of that was just it still got played every day. Like way past like the Nintendo had been out for like over a year in the US before my dad was like, we get something better, and then like for the other kids, the littler kids, maybe let them just have sole use of this Atari. And I was like, all right. So, but no, it's I know a lot of people love that brand, and it's been through such ups and downs over the years, and it's really cool to hear people's stories about just how they stuck with it to the bitter end in a lot of cases, or have come back to it now after all this time. And I think the Falcon 030. I know a lot of people like kind of it was right at the end and people were very kind of like, I don't know, do I stick with this? This is a big investment, but all the amazing stuff you can do with that. And it was like, especially for like music people that still
Oh, yeah.
like absolutely like swear by those machines today.
Yeah, I mean, up until just a couple years ago, I mean, he said he's stopped making music now, but Fatboy Slim still used his ST in shows up until his I believe his comment was, you can't fix a hammer. It just
Yeah.
worked for him what he did. Like obviously it's not for everyone, but for him, he's like, I tried things on other platforms and
Yeah.
just didn't work. And then like today, like Logic was an Ensoniq product originally, which started on an Atari ST. So that's an Apple product today, but that was started as an ST product in the 80s. So
Yeah.
things have continued with that. But like, you know, sometimes I've been asked if I had to choose, like I was on a deserted island, would I take an ST or would I take an Atari 8-bit? I would take an 8-bit, even though I love my STs, but I would take my Atari 800 is what I would take because that's probably ultimately my favorite computer.
Well, what's the rarest bit of kit that you guys own? Like how many slot 2 carts for the Atari 800 do you own?
Bill?
Well, I would have to say the rarest thing that I have, and Pete mentioned this, that David Owl had come to one of our Atari parties at my house, and he was the founder of Creative Computer Magazine in the 70s, and so he's in his 90s now, and he was getting rid of all his basically everything he had when he created his magazine, his retro computers, and he asked me if I wanted it, and I made him a deal. I'm like, he gave me a price, and I'm like, well, what if I give you, twice what you're asking, but we give it to charity? And he's like, oh, that's great. I have a charity in Peru, and you could give it to that, and I could give him twice as much because my company would match it, right?
Oh, that's great.
And I'm like, this is great because my wife is from Peru, so it's a win-win situation. And so one of the things I got out of that deal was a Pong arcade machine. So Atari was sued in the early 70s, I think, by Magnavox, and David All had was an expert witness for Atari, but Atari didn't have money to pay him, so they gave him a Pong machine for payment. So he had a full-size Pong machine, but at some point he moved into an apartment and he didn't have space for it, so he got rid of the cabinet, and all he had was like the control panel and the hardware to run the game hooked to a TV. And so I got that, and I worked with the guy from the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, whose father was a cabinet maker, and they rebuilt a spot-on cabinet with the right
awesome.
TV, and we put it back together, and now it's sitting in that museum. So
that's awesome.
well, I own the control panel and the hardware, and the other guy owns the cabinet, but it's in a museum, and it's probably the rarest thing I have.
That's pretty awesome. Do you what's the coin box in that machine? Because it isn't like weren't they just using like jerry cans with the tops cut off at one point or something?
I think it's just a wooden box.
Okay.
What's in there?
Yeah. Probably makes a lot less noise.
Yeah.
So for me, the rarest, probably 2 items. Is previously mentioned Atari Falcon 030. They only made 30,000 of those, maybe. The other thing is I have an Atari Stacy, and the Stacy was Atari's luggable. Originally it was designed to run on D batteries if you wanted it to, but they found out that 15 minutes is all you were going to get out of it. So they actually sealed the cart, like it's like glued closed on the Stacy where the battery bay would go, because they're like, this isn't going to work. The technology just wasn't there yet. Again, they probably made about 30,000 of those. They were primarily designed for musicians because they would lug from place to place. And at the beginning of, if anybody remembers the Arsenio Hall show, they would do like a flyover, and his keyboard player had AC mounted on his rig there, which was kind of interesting. It's passive matrix, so of course you can't really play games on it or anything. It weighs a ton, and I love it to death. So it's definitely pretty cool. That's probably the 2 rarest things that I have, both of which were just low volume items that just never really took off, other than they were, glamour projects, I guess, more than anything else.
Yeah, I feel so inferior. My rarest Atari stuff isn't such great relics of the Atari's past. So the rarest Atari equipment I have is excuse me. I actually have 3 ICD multi-IOs, and I have the K products, which was the super hard drive interface. And then I also have 2 ATR 8000s, one of them with the Co-Power 88.
Nice.
So
that's the one you could run CDM on, right?
Yeah, the MS-DOS emulator.
Oh, right. Okay.
It was a external
Daughter
floppy
board.
drive interface.
Yeah.
But it had a Z80 processor, so it could run CPM.
Right.
But then you could add the Co-Power 88, which was an 8088 processor that would run MS-DOS.
Fascinating.
Very cool.
That's
Javier, do you own any Atari stuff still?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
nice.
I got an XT,
Mhm.
1040, and I got that one that I upgraded as much as I could. It's an 800, and it has those multi cartridges, and I run Prince of Persia,
Oh, nice.
the new one.
Yeah, that's beautiful. They did a great job converting.
Oh yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
So that's a lot better. I think it's the best Prince of Persia in 8-bit computers.
And the opening is amazing. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got, of course, you guys know about my little device, so yeah.
Oh,
That's
for
my home
power.
machine. Yep.
USB
Wow.
power.
Yeah, USB power supply with a little rig.
Those are really neat. Yep.
I see your 2C in the background. I took mine over the summer and replaced the keyboard with one of those backlit ones, the new ones.
Oh yeah, we are about
really
to get
nice.
the black one out.
Mhm.
So
Very cool.
I helped to do those. So yep, I am a 2C enthusiast. Let's say.
Yeah,
I got too many, I think.
I do like the 2C.
Yeah.
I like the 2C plus, but I'm afraid every time I plug it in, it's only got so many times you can turn it on.
Yeah, I got 2C pluses,
Mm-hmm.
2Cs. I'm just like you guys with Atari.
Gotcha. Yeah, 2C plus is the one with the 3.5-inch floppy.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a fast 2C with a 3.5-inch, so that way for schools to
And
run.
The power is inside.
Yeah.
It's a
So-
laser 128.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the
Yeah.
power supply is inside. The
Yeah.
laser is still outside. Yeah.
Right. That's
So
pretty
schools could have a fast machine to run AppleWorks on.
neat. Gotcha.
It's really what it comes down to. Or and it I read a story recently where it was like a lot of that accelerated stuff really just came down to printing. They were just trying to make it. It's like a 4 megahertz 6502 C, so that way that you could just kick the print job out in a computer lab and let people get on with their day.
Yeah, that's funny. So at the show, I got a quick couple things there.
Yeah.
We had a couple of programs shown there, which are pretty neat. So there's a gentleman in the UK named Jonathan Thomas who was making a race car game called Faster for the ST,
Mhm.
and it was being premiered at there's a huge show in Poland called Silly Venture, which is like a 5-day demo party in Poland. And I reached out to Jonathan. I'm like, hey, I know this is a big ask, but I'm having this show here in North America on the same day as you're showing it in Silly Venture. Yeah, you absolutely can show it. You just can't give it to anybody because it wasn't going to be released until a few days later. So that was awesome. We actually had that. People really enjoyed playing that at the show. I think it's like retroracing.itch.io or something. You can go and get the game for free if you want. That was really fun. And then Amiga Bill brought a couple of games which were really neat. There was a an Amiga game that was like a Star Wars game. It was Star. Maybe Bill will be able to type in it. Star Dust Wars, I think it was called. And it was a technical tour de force. The game isn't all that. It's like a shooting gallery game, but it's just amazing to look at. So if you get a chance, check that out. And then we played Santatron, which is like a Robotron game, but with Santa Claus, another Amiga game.
Oh, wow.
And Bill bought a 2-stick joystick, and I was terrible at it, but it was amazing to play. And I'm glad we had some neat things to be shown there that had just been released to the public, and that was really cool to have at our little crazy train station show. So
I had been testing Bobble Bubble up to that time, and I had asked if I could show it at the event, and I was told no. But as I was driving there, they texted me and said I could show it. I'm like, well, I can't show it now because I don't have the right equipment to show it.
Yeah.
And then it came out like a couple days later. It was too bad I couldn't show it there. But
so
Bobble
then
Bubble came out really good.
another thing that was just amazing. There was a gentleman that's part of our group named Andy Diller, who's part of the FujiNet project. I don't know if you know what FujiNets are or not.
Yeah.
Let's not do a deep dive on those. But I kind of threw it out in our group chat ahead of time. I'm like, hey, I'm going to make a little demo to play at Atari Party. It would be really cool if somebody made some other things to bring along. Like, this isn't a demo event, but if you had something you want to make and share it would be great. So I just made this little thing. It's got an Atari logo and snowflakes come down. It was silly and just sort of running in the background. Didn't even bother showing it to anybody. But Andy went all out. He made something called Atari Party Panic. He made an Infocom game about and he made a box, and he like went through and had like.
Would you hold it back up there? Sorry.
Yeah, so he had this, and then the box here with the Panic on there, and then it came with I guess you call these the
Feelies?
browsies, I guess is what they're called.
Feelies, yeah.
And then and like the back of the box is like all about the event. It was just incredible.
That's really great.
I got a chance to just kind of play it for a few minutes, and I need to just set up and play it more. The amount of time and Carrie put into this thing was just impressive. So that's the kind of stuff that I love at parties like this, where people just surprise you with something that you just don't really expect. And so hopefully that continues as we go on.
Absolutely. Well, let's open this up. Maybe you have a couple of questions and stuff from the audience. I've got a couple of things starred that I wanted to bring up here. Jeremy's Vintage Hillbilly Shack asks, Atari 800XL or the ST 1040?
Oh.
I mean, so that's a pretty. It's a completely different era of computing, so it's hard to answer that question.
Yeah.
As I said before, if I was on a deserted island, I would take the 8-bit over the ST, and I love my STs. But it depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to play a lot of games and look at 40 columns, then go with the 8-bit. If you want a more general purpose computer, then I would go with the ST, because the ST was designed to be a Macintosh cheaper. I mean, in fact, it was nicknamed the Jackintosh because it was Jack's Mac. And people always said that, like, it competed with the Amiga. The Amiga was a completely different computer. I'll admit it was a better machine than the ST, which is blasphemy. But it was designed as a multimedia machine. The ST was designed like, hey, let's do desktop publishing. Why don't we undercut Apple and all sorts of products? That's what it was designed to do, and it did a nice job with that. But it's not an Amiga, so it's different. So, Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm going to go with the 800XL because that's what I had. That's what I learned on. That's what I credit for the career and life I have today. So I'm going to stick with the
Javier's got a
800XL.
Magic Stack, which allows you to run Macintosh software on your Atari ST. I have the later version, which is the Spectre GCR, which is kind of nice. It gets around the strange Macintosh file format, because basically the ST basically just runs the same file format as a MS-DOS machine does.
Right.
And so that lets you just use their disk directly, as opposed to there was a process with the Magic Stack to run the Macintosh software. But the Stacy that I have, for instance, for a while was the world's cheapest Mac portable, because you could buy a Spectre and you could buy a Stacy for half the price that Apple was selling a Mac portable for. So it was faster slightly, and it had a bigger screen.
Yeah, there was a time that the Atari was the cheapest Macintosh that
Yeah.
you could buy. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got a couple more questions. If folks want to add a question to the chat, we'll go through and we'll get those up here as well. One Bit Fever Dreams asks, did the rise of accurate emulation in the 1990s help to bring back the Atari world, or did the fandom even need that push to get people back?
I think really the rise of like the internet and people getting on the internet brought a lot of people back to the Atari world, because a lot of information became available. People started looking at 2600 code, and I think that brought a lot of people back. The accurate emulation just made it so much better. I mean, you can write code down on Atari using like Visual Studio Code. You write Fast Basic, you click a button, and it ends up on an emulator in like a second. It's so easy to write code and test it now using emulation. And then you can use the FujiNet to move that code that you just tested in emulation over to real hardware, in 2 seconds later, and you're testing on a real machine. So all of these things have helped.
Yeah, and there were quite a lot of Atari 800 emulators available on PC, Mac, and Linux. I use Hatari on the ST emulator on my Macintosh, but there's a variety. There's some called Steam. That's a PC emulator for STs as well. There's a lot of stuff. I like both of them. I mean, I love actually having the real hardware. I prefer to do that. But there's sometimes, as you know, it's just not practical. And so I do enjoy the ability to go back and forth, and that did help with my interest a little bit. Maybe I never really went away. Like, I never got rid of my stuff. So, but there are times, there'll be months that I don't touch anything, and then there's times I use it every day. So,
Absolutely. Amiga Bill asks, what are the best modern upgrades for the Atari 800/800 XL?
For networking, FujiNet is.
So this is the FujiNet device. This just plugs right into the deal there. It gives you Wi-Fi. It gives you the ability to play games online. They have there's a room where you can go and play poker and stuff against randos on the. It's
printer emulation, voice to text to voice emulation.
You print the PDFs, so that's pretty great. It just goes. You can just print. You're using Print Shop. You just can print it right to a PDF on your FujiNet, which is a great thing. All of it's great. So that is, for me, it's the best device that's out right now.
Very cool. Let me see here. Anything Broken Garage asks, with the rise of retro upgrade projects, what's your favorite modern hardware or software upgrades for any of the Atari lines? I know FujiNet has definitely flipped the script on a lot of stuff and made it really, really easy, especially with people that it's like, well, I don't have a mountain of floppy disks, or I don't even have a drive, or whatever, to try to get people doing those things. But I know it kind of feeds into that, but is there anything else that for any of the line of Atari machines?
So on the ST, there's something called the Side Cart, which is a very similar product to FujiNet. It allows you to load ST programs over the internet, so you don't need to have anything local. So it does a lot of what the FujiNet does, just by a different. They're made in Spain, and they're like $40 or something. They're not even that expensive. It basically is a hard drive emulator. You can run Atari ST, like .st or .stx files. You can run them and just boot it like you're running it natively. To me, that's a really great product for 16, 32-bit computers. But it's a similar project to what FujiNet would be.
Very cool.
I think on the Atari 2600, the guys that used to be a part of Activision, they've created a company called Audacity Games, and they've come out with some really great games in the last few years. One that just came out last month is called Casey's Gold. They had another one a couple years ago. It was like a Circus Convoy, I think it was called. Do you remember what that one was called, Pete?
I don't. I know they were all very similar titles. Like there was like a
Yeah, I think it was Circus Convoy. They were really great games on the 2600.
So yeah, there's that. One thing that I had done here, put a picture of it here. Like I brought for the Atari Lynx, which is Atari's handheld. They make modern LCD replacements,
Yeah.
which are just amazing.
Oh,
I had one done by somebody in Kansas, and then a couple years ago, Josh Malone here is in the chat did this one for me, and it's been like I can do basic soldering and stuff. This is way past my level of anything. So Josh is my hero for lots of stuff. He fixes more stuff for me than he probably should, but I appreciate it, Josh. But yeah, so that's a great product. If you have a Lynx, the battery life is way better, and the pictures. If they had that screen in 1989, Nintendo wouldn't be around because it was that amazing. It's just it's an impressive thing. I love my Lynxes. I got both of them for my brother for Christmas presents when I was a young man. He got me the original Lynx in '89, and I think the Lynx 2 in '91 or something, '92 for Christmas. And I love those guys a lot.
I was going to say those screens have just been game changers on those, because I remember because I was in high school when those machines came out, and it was like a friend of mine had one. He brought it to school because actually I bought his Game Boy. He sold his Game Boy and all of his games because he wanted to get a Lynx. He got the Lynx. He got a couple of games, and I was like, I can't see. It's like I'm really trying here, man, but it's like I can't see.
Yeah, I mean, you really needed to be in really optimum light conditions, which basically meant like low light. And like, it was fine, but this has been amazing. Anybody who has a Lynx, if you have one in a closet someplace, they're not a cheap update, but it's worth doing if you have one. It is game changing. So,
I got two other questions, and then we'll see where we go from there. JVHS is asking: has anybody worked on towards cloning the Falcon 030?
So the answer to that is just found out about this a couple weeks back. I'd heard some rumblings. There was a company out of New York City called Wiztronics back in the ST era that basically took ST hardware and installed it into things that you can put into a rack mount. So musicians would carry these things around in a 19-inch, 1U enclosure or whatever. And this company has never gone out of business. They still make music related stuff now, obviously not ST related, but during the end times of Atari, the Tramiel era, a bunch of companies were granted the rights to clean out Atari. So there's Best Electronics in California, B&C Computer Visions, there's another one in the Midwest someplace I don't remember, and Wiztronics was involved. Well, Wiztronics ended up getting all of the Atari Falcon stuff. So they got, so if you've ever used a PlayStation 2, and the case for the PlayStation 2 is the Atari Falcon 040 Microbox case. Atari actually sold the molds to Sony afterwards, which is bizarre, but that's the case that it was going to be used in. Well, Wiztronics has found 5 or 6 different prototypes of the Atari Falcon 030 and the 040, and they claim that they are now working on a modern implementation of the Falcon 030 that has all the fixes that Atari had planned that didn't do, and they plan to sell this sometime in 2026, maybe. I don't know if it happens or not, but that's the current plan. And I just found out about this like 2 weeks ago.
Wow,
It's pretty amazing.
I hope they do.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people will be like, "Oh, thank goodness I can update my hardware, or just at least back it up without, breaking the bank." But
Right.
So how prolific is today's new software dev on the Ataris compared to other machines, if that's possible? It's, what's the development like? Are there great new games? I mean, we heard about some just a second ago, but I mean, do things keep pushing on in like the music communities and things like that? And what keeps people making new things? Like what drives them?
So a lot of the games you see come out are like games that were available on other systems that are getting ported to the Atari for the first time, like Bobble Bubble. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of new, fresh new ideas on like the 8-bit machines.
Mhm.
So if you go to, again, it's itch.io or whatever, and if you search, there's a large number of games that come out every year on the Atari 8-bit, mainly from Poland. So the reason that is that Jack Tramiel was a Pole, was in an internment camp during World War II,
Yeah.
and when he got out, he came to Canada first, and then into the United States. After the kind of fall of the Berlin Wall and the whole Eastern Bloc,
Yeah.
Jack was the first person that was able to sell Western computers in Poland.
Mhm.
So they started selling 8-bit machines primarily in Poland, and the scene there is huge. Like that is, if you're an Atari person, Eastern Europe is kind of the place to be for that for modern things, because they got into it very late. It was probably 91, 92, and they were finally able to start doing this stuff, and it's continued. They actually played Atari programs over the air so people could record them onto the set. So in Poland, this was something that they did. So at like 2:00 in the morning, you would turn to FM channel such and such, and you can record programs. I mean, that's crazy. And they've continued that tradition. So there's lots of games that come out of Poland. A lot of times I have an NTSC Atari. Sometimes they won't work because you need a PAL machine. So there is that.
Very cool. Oh, Sloopy, you're muted.
And I never sounded better, right?
Yep.
So, of all the Atari offerings, which would you say is your personal favorite?
Bill?
Still, for me, it's going to be the Atari 8-bit computers. I started with the Atari 400 and the 800 XL, and it's still my favorite machines to this day.
And I'm going to agree with him. I love my 8-bits a lot. I love my STs because being in North America, it just wasn't common here, and so there's something about kind of being the guy, because I have pretty much everything they ever made, and so that's kind of cool. And I did love that period, but there's something magical about. I was, like I said, I was an 11-year-old kid who bought this computer with basically my own money, and there's something that sticks with me, and I just. Those games are what I go to when I have 15 minutes to do something. I don't fire anything else up. I fire it up an Atari 8-bit machine and play. Games.
I could say out of all the things that we've had at our Atari party, the one line of business that we have not had yet is Atari Pinball. And Atari had some interesting pinball machines in the late 70s, like the huge Hercules machine and Superman, and they had a couple other ones, but I think they're pretty rare.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that has been at Atari Party, thanks to Paul Rickards every year, he brings Atari video music, which is an amazing device. Like, it is this device that's a visualizer for sound on your television from 1976 or something. It is the greatest. I don't know. That may be my favorite Atari product ever. It is just. It is like it's just. It is 1970s in a box. It's just, you can smell the cigar smoke in the basement and the wood paneling and the big console TV. It is. If you don't know which one is, sometime just do a video search of that, and that's an amazing product. I love that.
Yeah, the Atari 8-bit's my favorite. I mean, personally, my first Atari 8-bit was an Atari 800. And I know that everyone has their own individual favorite Atari 8-bits. Where do you see the future of people using these machines going. Because I mean, we've got all these upgrades that are available. We've got all these video upgrades for doing VGA, RGB, and then DVI, HDMI. Then we have the FujiNet, and then we have the various S drives of various ilks. Where do you see the future going for the Atari 8-bit?
You have any ideas, Bill?
I have to get out my crystal ball. No, it's hard to say, right? Because the people who have nostalgia for it, we're getting older. Unless there's younger people to pick it up, who knows? Who knows where it's going?
There is. I've seen several channels of young people showing off the Ataris. In Europe mostly, but there's this girl called Carrie. She always shows Atari stuff, and and she says that her name rhymes with Atari, so she's a big Atari fan. So and she goes and opens things and cleans up stuff. So I got a lot of good faith in a lot of people are gonna begin to come up with a retro.
Yeah,
I mean, it's possible. I'm a bit like Bill. I'm not real sure that this hobby kind of outlives us all that much, to be honest with you. I think there will be some people that are interested, but I have a son who works as he's a cybersecurity guy, and he humors me. Like, he likes to mess around with it sometimes, but it's not his thing. Like, he didn't grow up with it. It doesn't. Right. There's no.
Yeah, it doesn't bring any feelings. Yeah.
There's nothing. Like I said, for me, I mean, obviously, what you can do on a modern computer is way more. There's something about getting it done with something that wasn't designed to do it, which is impressive and fun. Yep. They're not going to have the tolerance or interest in that. I don't think it continues. Sadly, I think that when we die off, I think so does. This stuff's going to be in a museum someplace, and a lot of it's going to end up in a landfill. That's where.
That's already where I keep all my copies of ET for the 2600.
Nice.
Actually, when I was a kid, I had no idea how to play it. Like, my older cousins, they actually had it, and it was I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I would just run around and just do stuff and make my own fun, because I had no idea what you were really supposed to. I found a part, and I was like, what's this all about? They're like, oh, you got to find 3 parts. I'm like, what?
The game was fine if you read the manual, but nobody read the manual. They just plugged it in and they turned it on, and they fell into a ditch over and over again, and they were like, this is stupid. So,
the collision detection on the ditches weren't that great.
Well, that's true.
They
were on a very tight schedule. So
there's some loser in the chat said, if buying an 800, should you hold off and buy an Atari 800 XL?
Yes. Yes, you should.
Or
put it incognito into your 800.
Well, but the 800 is nicer looking. I don't know. It's more I like that keyboard, and I like that old look. And the XL is nice. It's kind of modern, but I would prefer to have the 800. I don't know you guys.
800.
What I might find most interesting is that everyone's talking about the 800 XL and the 800, but there seems to be no love given for the 65XE or the 130XE.
Yeah, well,
600.
So Tramiel was up against a tough deal there. They needed to cut the money because the price, because Commodore was a race to the bottom, and everybody got hit hard with it, and Atari especially. And so Jack had experience of cutting costs because he came from Commodore, and those machines suffered. However, I have a 130XE that still works fine years later, and I know that the keyboards aren't great, but it's still going. And I have they made this thing called the XEGS, which is this weird gaming system. I still have one of those that works great. So yeah, I have no problems with them. And then modern times they're great because they're lighter and they're smaller. And if you go to the Atari Party, they're easy to carry.
And the worst thing about the 130XE, I think, is the mushiness of the keyboard, and you can get replacements for the keyboard to make them more palatable.
Let me ask you this: on because this may have just unlocked a memory for me. The 130 XE, was there some manner of PCM CIA storage upgrade or something for that to add like additional storage on the machine, or compact flash or something, or some sort of flash storage on those machines? Maybe
So there's
even
been
in
a
like the
lot
mid
of those
90s.
over the years. There's been the side cart was originally, and that used compact flash. Again, you can use it with any Atari computer, though. I mean, it just
Yeah.
needed all the Atari computers have a cartridge slot, and as long as whatever cartridge they have, sometimes the 800 or the 400 has like a lid, and you can't fit them in there. But the rest of them you can just pop in there, and you can do it. So yeah, there was the side cart was the original one, and there's been a bunch of them since. So.
Yeah. And then there's the most important question. Was the Atari 1200 XL the greatest Atari 8-bit or the worst Atari 8-bit made?
Bill?
I have one. I tend to keep it in the box and use something
no.
else. It wasn't compatible, right? It had some compatibility issues.
But it had those angled joystick ports. Shouldn't have that been good enough? I don't know.
Before
I
you
did like-
Keyboard, when it works, is the nicest Atari keyboard. Sloopy's
before you
first-
answer, remember,
You can't see it. It's,
You can't see
Yeah. You got to get it closer to the camera.
I did like that the cartridge slot was on
There
the
you go,
side instead
perfect.
of the back.
There you go.
And so it had like extra features. Now, originally the 1200 XL was going to be the 1400 XL, which had like built-in speech synthesizer, a 300 baud modem, and it was price cut. And with the price cut, they cut a lot of things. And the other thing too is there's external power. So most people don't realize this, but the Atari SIO port was designed by this guy named Joe DeCure. And Joe DeCure is a guy responsible for USB. So basically, USB came from the Atari SIO port. And what ended up happening is when Atari made the 1200 XL, they cut the power line, so you couldn't power anything externally off of the port. So I'm going to say the 1200 XL was a great idea that wasn't really compatible with a lot of things, and it was a compromise. I would skip it and get an 800 XL rather than a 1200 XL.
Okay. You heard it here.
There's a lot
Everybody
more-
go to
there's a lot
eBay
more-
right now.
There's a lot more 800 XLs, so they're cheaper than.
Well,
the
that's
1200 XLs.
definitely true.
Yeah.
now it's just I know there's a lot of debate about how great it was, but I mean, as you and I know, simple ROM upgrade and it makes it fully 800 XL compatible. So it's not really much of a difference. But yeah, I know a lot of people are very polarized about the 1200 XL. Me personally, I think it's a great machine because I actually had one back in the day. But yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword in that regard.
So the original Atari Party guy, back to the beginning there, Bill Kendrick, that was his first computer. He had an Atari 1200 XL. So that's it. I have one. It's great. I think it's beautiful. I think it's the nicest looking machine, but I don't use it very much.
Yeah. The other thing that, on a more serious note, one thing that I feel that a lot of people don't seem to understand, as you were mentioning, that the Atari SIO was designed by Joe DeCore, and he was also one of the principal designers of USB. And what I think is that there is a lot of technological advances in the Atari 8-bit that a lot of people these days don't realize. Sort of like the Atari 8-bit had the very first programmable GPU of any computer system.
True.
And most people these days don't understand that. What advances in the Atari do you feel are still relevant today, like the USB and the SIO, and the programmable GPU?
People like I go to shows where they have they'll have a flea market and people will buy the Atari computers just to pull the Pokies out to do things with the Poki chips that in their own projects.
Yeah, I mean the chiptune people love them, and they love the Commodore SID because they're different. The Pokey, I'm not a musician, but the Pokey's got something that they claim is wrong in the wavetable, and it makes a slightly strange sound sometimes. And apparently, it's that defect is actually kind of coveted amongst people. They like the sound of it, so. I prefer the Pokey sound over a SID. Sorry, Commodore people, but it's probably just because I grew up with the Pokey, so I just that's probably what it is. So
Me and my
you
daughter
Apple II guys like beeps, so you get
Beeps are
that.
pretty great.
Yeah,
Actually,
they're
you know what's better than beeps? A computer that has to stop absolutely everything it's doing to generate sound. And so a lot of the early games don't have sound. That's the Macintosh way.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. The Tandy Color computer was very similar until they figured ways around it. But yes, me and my dog agree that Pokey was best.
Very cool.
So, but yeah, because I mean, there were several advances in the Atari 8-bit that they're still prevalent today, like how the SIO system, how all devices are treated the same, sort of like in Unix and then by extension Linux, how all devices are treated as the same in the file system.
Yeah.
So there's like many advancements in the computer industry that were pioneered by the Atari 8-bit.
And Atari kind of got a little bit of in a tough spot when they first started. Apple, because they didn't make games, were exempt from a lot of RF shielding. Original Atari 800s and 400s, I'm not exaggerating. I think it's 3/16 thick shielding in those things. It is ridiculous because the FCC was like, no, you're going to make all sorts of. This is a game machine, and Atari's like, no, it's a computer. And Apple didn't have to deal with that, and Atari did, and I'm not really sure how that all went down. I guess it's all about who got what, I suppose. So.
The reason why that was is because the Atari had the RF modulator built in, so it could hook up directly to TV.
Yeah.
And that was why the Apple II didn't have to have the shielding, because it didn't have the RF modulator built in. The same with the VIC-20. That's why the RF modulator was sold as a separate thing that plugs into the video port. It was so that they didn't have to have all that RF shielding that the Atari did, which what really sucked, so to speak, was in 1981, the FCC changed the rules so you didn't need all that shielding. So therefore, then when the Commodore 64 came along in '82, it didn't need all the shielding, and they were able to make it for a much cheaper price.
Yeah.
Save on all that shipping too.
And the other thing was that the Commodore only had the Commodore 64, right? The Atari had 7-8 computers that were basically exactly the same, competing against each other.
Yeah, well, they didn't really sell them all at the same time. Mostly it was like a sliding scale. The 400, 800, and then the 600 XL, 800 XL, and then later on the 600 XL, 800 XL, and then the
130
XE and 130 XE, and then they had the XE game system on the side. So
very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was a really great conversation. I'm super pleased that we were able to have both of y'all on. I hope you'll stay for the second segment. Normally what we do in the second half of the show is we talk about cool things we've got or things that we're working on. And I'm sure you just had Atari Party, maybe picked up something fun.
Yeah.
Add to your collection. So you guys are welcome to stay if you like, but I'd like to go ahead and maybe get the ball rolling on that segment, if that's okay. Make sure everybody heads over to atariparty.org, bookmark it, keep checking back. You can follow Pete and Bill on Blue Sky, and we'll put some links and stuff in the show description later, so that way that people can see what those guys are up to too. So thank you very much. This was really good. And thank you, Sloopy, for coming along for the ride tonight, because I know all my experiences with console stuff, with Atari
Mhm.
stuff, and not the home computers. I
Shame
had
on you.
neighbors.
Shame on
I
you.
Yeah, I had neighbors that had that stuff, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So everything that it was, I'd go to somebody's house and would like check out their things, and it always seemed really neat. I had a neighbor that had a 5200, and I was like, what's this? And then he showed me Donkey Kong, and I was like, yeah, this is really weird. I was like, yeah, this is a really strange interpretation of Donkey Kong, but that's fine. So
Yeah.
very cool. Well, how about Pete, have you gotten anything? Are you working on anything currently that you'd like to share with us?
So I mentioned you in the pre-show. The only thing that I'm doing currently is I have this external Atari ST hard drive called a mega file, and it has an old RLL hard drive in it. And that started to fail. So I literally was doing the Apple III, like, drop 3 inches to make the drive work, which is not great on a drive. So
Yeah.
it I kind of I like to keep things as stock as possible, and finding new RLL hard drives is impossible. They don't.
Yeah.
There's none around. I had a couple I'd purchased on eBay over the years, and they last for about a week and then they die because it's
Yeah.
mid 80s at the latest time. So there's this company out of Canada that makes this. It's called the DREM or DREM, DREM.info, I think it was their website, and they make a MFM RLL drive emulator. And it's stupid expensive. It was like $300 for this thing.
Damn.
Yeah. And so I'm like, should I just rip the internals out of this mega file and put something cheaper in it? Or should I do the right thing and try to maintain the product the best I could? And I try to keep things as original as possible. So I saved up and I bought one of these things. And it's worked very well. That I just kind of did right around Christmas. And it's been kind of fun to play with, but I don't know if it was $300 fun, but it's saved. And then for future shows, I go to anything, I can bring this and don't have to worry about the parking the heads on the drive or anything. I can just lug it around, and so for that, it's going to be good. But so that's the only like hardware project that I've been dealing with. So
Very cool.
Yeah, I picked up a Beagle Bone Black so that I can get one of them one day.
yeah, I think that's a competing product that uses the Beagle Bone. I see somebody mentioned here in the chat. There was another brand, PDP8 Online has one.
Mhm.
I think that's the one that uses the Beagle Bone.
Yeah.
When I looked into that one, it didn't seem to be dimensionally proper for what I needed, and the price wasn't a whole lot different. So I went with the one that I knew just would kind of fit. So
Yep. So
Bill, are you working on anything, or have you gotten any cool new gets or anything?
Well, from time to time, I write for Old School Gamer magazine. I don't know if you guys have seen that magazine, but I write for that, and I go to video game conventions around the country with them to work at their booth. I work with a couple of authors, and I kind of do like a technical overview of their books before publication, make sure if I see any history or anything that's doesn't make sense. I test games from time to time, like Bobble. Just for Christmas this year, I got the Atari VCS PC. I think for Black Friday, Atari had like 50% off everything. And so I picked that up and I just started playing with that. And I think I mentioned earlier that Audacity Games just came out with Casey's Gold, a new game for the 2600. So I just got that as well. So I want to plug that in and start playing with that game as well.
Very cool.
Nice.
Javier.
Oh,
let's roll it into one. So cool thing you're working on and new gets.
I don't remember I have any new gets lately, other than my already been told, like everybody, the new MSX that I got. If I disconnect, it's going to be easier. I got this MSX from Japan,
wow.
and I've been playing with it. I restored it. I got this cartridge, and it's amazing. I like it. I've never had one, so it's a great machine. So,
One of the things I've always found interesting about the MSX machines is they always have an interesting layout for the arrow keys.
Yeah. Oh, I think we lost Javier.
what?
Oh no, he's there. Like your bandwidth went away. So
Oh,
is that a
sorry.
second cartridge slot on the back, or what is
Yeah,
that?
that's what I
Oh,
like.
wow.
You know, it has one on the top
Yeah.
and one on the back.
I was gonna say, because I watched something recently where they were talking about on those MSX machines that like Konami and some other companies
Yeah.
had, you could put like a game like Salamander in, and then in the second slot you could put one of their other titles, and it would patch in to the ROM on the other game, so that way you could be flying around in Salamander as like an XB, or like the enemies, it would import enemies from the other game into it, so it's just sort of like an add-on feature to try to get you to buy multiple games.
Yeah, I love it. I what I love more about it is the design. I'm not really crazy about the system itself. It's just like any other computer, but the design is really nice. So
Yeah, they're very pretty. I think Sony made some of the prettiest ones of all of those, like the red accent or like the red machines.
yeah, I think
so.
So that's what I've been doing. That as you can see, I'm gonna plug my beautiful connector for the Atari.
Yeah.
Same thing as the one that I have for the Apple IIc.
Mm-hmm.
This is gonna be black.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
Go black. That's what you happen. So.
Yeah.
And that one, and this is my latest, my little USB.
Yeah.
Printed computer.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it's a USB, and I added I think you see the little short, but anyway, I added a little USB connector on the side, so you actually can connect a mouse on it.
You can actually use it.
You can use it.
Yeah.
That's
So this is cool. I'm gonna try to make more of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's see.
Very cool.
That's it.
Nice. Sloopy, what have you been working on?
Mostly Blue Scuzzy, and this week I'm going to be starting on some Fuji nets to work on, and then let's see, what do I've got in the pipeline? I think that's it at the moment. A couple things for the Coco. My latest and greatest new get is I just got myself a 2001 Chevy Tahoe.
Nice.
So it'll be great going out to VCF Midwest in it, but until I have to go, until I can't pass a gas pump.
Yeah. Well, you can always go the JVHS route. He, I think, drove a Dodge Dakota all the way from Arkansas to East one year, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't think I got to drive past a single gas pump the whole way."
Oh,
yeah.
Had to stop and say hi everywhere.
Yeah.
So I have a couple little things, and I teased some of this on Old World Tech Friday the other day, but I'll show this off. You're all familiar with the Macintosh SE, right? Hi, Macintosh SE. Hi, Ron. All right. So I have a cool new upgrade for these machines for people, and there's a bunch of different use cases, but you know how you use your old Macs. But if you've got just like a motherboard laying around and you're wanting to play around with it, I actually made a new board that I call the SE Topper, that basically plugs in the top of your. It's tough for me to do it upside down and backwards, but plugs into the top of your Macintosh SE motherboard, and basically integrates the video out stuff that I've been doing for a while. Gives you a nice VGA connection, so that way you can hook it up to a semi-modern display. And there we go. Left is right and right is left when you're looking in the camera. And you can plug a Pico ATX power supply in here. I'm kind of marketing this for like the SE, but it does work with the SE30. The only problem is you can't populate the second bank of RAM, because this is right where the RAM slots are on your SE30. But you know what? 4 16 meg 30 pin sims, like 64 megs of RAM, and a 68030 machine, it's pretty great. 128 is kind of killing it. But in any case, you might be like, hey, what's with this weird slot cut out over here on the side? And that's because that's perfectly set up where you can use Mark from Mac Effects. He's got a cool accelerator for the Macintosh.
Oh,
system.
yeah.
It's all designed. It fits right in that open space over there. But something else that's also really nice about this board is if you don't want to necessarily use VGA, there's another option, which is a second header on here where you can plug in your. Here, I will try to do it where I'm looking at it from the correct direction. You can you can plug in your RGB to HDMI.
Ooh.
So yeah, so basically you've got lots and lots of options of stuff you can do with these boards now. This will probably, I'm going to send a couple of these out for testing, and then as soon as I get feedback from people, that'll probably you'll be able to see it over there at jcm-1.com. In terms of neat things that I've gotten, unfortunately I stacked a bunch of stuff up on top of it, but I finally got my Macintosh Portable repaired, and it's working and is doing really, really well. It was a donation from someone that watches the channel, and again, thank you very much. But it did not work, and it didn't work, and they were like, it doesn't work. So I don't want to get your hopes up or anything, but I was like, oh no, it's okay. I mean, it's for free. It's worth playing around with. So eventually Mike Tech Knight started talking more about how he was doing some restore work on those, and Droda, who makes a lot of neat add-ons he's part of the Blue Scuzzy project. He makes a replacement hybrid module to the power management module for the Macintosh Portable, makes all kinds of adapters and battery replacements and things like that. All of those things got in stock right as Tech Knight had time on his schedule to maybe work on it. And so I sent it all off in December. I got it back right before we went on break, and it's great. It's a 16 megahertz 68030. I've got a 3 meg RAM card in it, so I mean you can run System 608 like a dream. It's a lot of fun, and I'm so super happy. I've wanted to get this thing working forever, and now it is. So now it sits on the corner of my desk next to my other projects. So,
Very cool.
but that's it for me.
Nice.
Only other thing I failed to mention when we were chatting earlier was there was a gentleman named Eric First who attended Atari Party, and he made a 2600 demo. Like, it's really short, and it just said Atari Party, and thanks to me, it says thanks for Pete for hosting or whatever. But he gave me a printout of all of his code in 6502 assembler. So I wanted to make sure I thanked him for that, because that was really amazing, and that he took the time to make that. So again, it's not to go back to an earlier subject.
No, that's just
fine. I
fine.
wanted to mention that, and I forgot to say something. So
No, that's really awesome. Go ahead and hold that up to the screen so that way we can go ahead and copy that down real fast.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right,
Good
everybody,
luck
type
copying it down.
fast.
Really fast. So yeah. So just really awesome. He gave me the printout of his code. So
Use it as the ending credits roll.
Right. Yeah. It'll be like
Right.
the yeah.
There you go. So yeah, so that was amazing, and I really appreciate. Again, I appreciate everybody who came, and I don't care if you just came and had a slice of pizza and played some Pac-Man, or you did something else. It was amazing having everybody there. So
Very cool. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you both for coming on, and I want to thank Sloopy for stopping by and helping us out. It's good to have knowledgeable friends, and it's good to have people that are excited about keeping these communities alive.
Yeah.
Again, it's not something that I have spent a lot of time in, but I have a lot of interest in it, just because it's especially the later machines and all that. I love gaming. I love all that type of stuff. I probably need to look into picking up an 800 XL so I can kind of join everybody else in the fun. And Retrofox asked earlier, Ron, will you be attending a future Atari party? And I'm gonna say the answer is yes. I got to get over there and check it out now.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
I'll have to stay in the loop and keep some PTO available for the first part of December next year. So
If we start getting more people, we're gonna have to get a bigger venue.
I know.
Then we're gonna have to get Atari to
The train
sponsor us.
station
I'll
is
stand
getting
outside
full.
and just shiver, like look in the window like a Dickensian orphan.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to start going to the Atari Party myself.
Yeah, I mean,
know.
you're only in Maryland. There's no excuse. Josh came all the way up from Virginia. We had Nate Hawthorne. I think he came from Buffalo, New York. People came from Pittsburgh. I mean, people made for a 4-hour party. We had people drive twice as long to get there, which is shocking to me. Which is amazing.
Yeah, well, I go up to Pennsylvania a lot. I'm only 5 miles from Pennsylvania border.
Sure.
And my girlfriend, she lives, as I said before, she lives outside of York.
Right.
And actually, Friday I was up in Tamaqua.
Oh, okay. You passed right past Tamaqua. So, yeah, we got a lot of weird names for towns in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
so.
And I'd love to meet Josh because I've talked to him online a couple times, and seems like a really great guy.
Yeah, Josh brought his Mister, and that was really cool. I had never seen one personally before, and that was really neat to play with that. It was great. Just amazing time.
And I would recommend all the people watching. Josh also he streams also, doesn't he? If my memory serves me.
He does. He's recently just moved. I don't know if he's still in the chat or not, but he does have a YouTube channel, but he recently just moved and he hasn't done it since he's moved. So I'm sure.
Right. Yeah.
And I see somebody asking when and where is the next Atari Party. I assume it'll be first week in December again of next year, most likely at the train station, but I guess it depends on interest. We may have to do something else.
Might have to move to the airport. You need that bigger venue.
Yeah.
So don't forget to bring your.
Airport. It's not very exciting, but yeah.
Make sure to sign up for TSA pre-check, and you're all set.
There you go.
Sir, I'm just going to pat you down a little bit. Wait a minute. Is this an Amiga mouse? Security, get this.
So the train station has this little antechamber that's off to the side. It's very small. And after the party, they're like, well, we saw you guys are pretty packed. If you want, you can get this little extra room. And I'm like, great. And then somebody made the joke that we're going to put the Amiga people in their own little.
Oh no! The children's table.
You know what? I love the Amiga people. I love it all. We're all 68,000 people in the 16-bit world. There, it's all good. And Bill's a great guy. And it's awesome. So, and and again, we had Mac 84 Steve was there with he brought an SE30, and so again and it was great because he had Maelstrom on it, which is like a Asteroids clone. So it was like, hey, I'm doing my part to be Atari. So that was really neat. And Paul Rickards had his Lisa, and he had Missile Command running on that, and which I didn't even know there was a version of. So I guess it was Mac XL program.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that a lot of that stuff, I don't know. I think there is a Lisa game or two, but they're like solitaire or something.
So again, it was great, and then so it was there, and then I can't think of the Sean from Action Retro came for a little while because he's a Philly guy, so he made the trip up. So it was great. It was really cool. We had a nice time.
It's very cool. Well, everybody, don't forget, check out the website, follow these guys on social media, and I want to thank everybody for stopping by again this evening. We're starting to have power flicker issues here because again it's starting to get cold outside after a full day of rain, so we'll see if we keep power tonight. Wish us luck. So
well, thanks for having us.
Everybody thank you so much again
for coming.
Remember to like and comment and subscribe and join us again later this month, where I believe our next show we will have Graham Devine from Seventh Guest 11th Hour fame. So if you like those old games for kind of the full motion puzzle era, I'm sure he'll have some amazing stories to share. So
that's great.
Yeah. But everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, thank you to the co-hosts, thank you to our guests, and we'll go ahead. We'll see you next time. I'm going to hit the end stream button. It takes sometimes 3 seconds, sometimes 3 hours. So everybody get your waving arms ready and commence waving. Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Appreciate it.